relative sizes of data, and the portions are measured to show a scaled version of data and parts to a whole. So as described in the first video, a circle is split into 360 even parts. So if I drew 360 parts, okay, and split them evenly, that would be 360 degrees. Okay, where half of my circle is 180 degrees, a quarter is 25 degrees, excuse me, a quarter, 25% is 90 degrees, okay, and then an eighth is 22.5 degrees, okay, and we can keep splitting it over and over and over again, but instead of splitting these in these even ambiguous numbers, we want to split this to represent data, and in this case, in class, we made a circle graph to represent how many people liked history, science, English, math, French, and Spanish, right? So we're going to use exact measurements and a protractor to do this. Alright, so a protractor has been evenly measured for us so that we know where 0 degrees is. Alright, if we look at the outside numbers at 0 degrees, all the way to where 180 degrees is. Right? If we then move our protractor around, so trace it around once from 0 to 100, put a dot in the center, put a dot where the center of your circle is, and then spin your protractor around. Look to make sure that that center of your protractor is still in the center of your circle, and then trace around the other half of the circle. Okay. And then when you move your protractor out of that space, it'll be a nice, perfect circle. Okay, so now we can start to see what are the proportions of each of these numbers. History, we found out by the survey, we found out that 30 people liked history the most, 34, 5, 29, 6, and 4, and we had a total of 108 survey results from this particular question. So the percentage of the whole, okay, so percent is calculated by taking the part divided by the whole. Okay, so for the first one, it's 30 divided by 108. So you should do those calculations and then fill in that part of your table. We got, and then leaving them as in decimal form will make it easier when you're calculating the next step. So percent, we have 0.28. So those are all of our percentages. And so basically what we want is, if you look at these numbers, 28%, 31, and 27, those ones are all relatively close. So in the end, our survey science, and math. And then the other three subjects, English, French, and Spanish, are essentially going to be split in between here. But this isn't to scale. To scale means accurate proportions. Okay? So since this is 100%, what in 360 degrees okay? 360 degrees is 100%. We need to know what is the degrees, the piece of our pie for each of these percents. All right, so draw my circle again. All right, so when you're calculating these percentages, you will notice that if you add them up, after you've rounded, it equals 101%. So what we really need to do is be knocking off a percentage from one of them. And I took that off of the French one. So actually this equals 100%. If you were going to do it on your own, you might be wondering how I got 100. And that's because I took French would have rounded to 0.06 and I made it 0.05. So the piece of the pie, right, is calculated by taking the percent multiply the percent times 360. And the percent needs to be in decimal form. Okay, so for example, for this one, we have 0.28 times 360. Degrees. Okay, so figuring out the other ones, go ahead and calculate that on your own, and I'll show that in a second. Okay, so here's all the percentages that you get after you calculate using the formula below. Okay, multiply percentage times 360 to get your piece of the pie. Now we can start measuring out. For history, we're looking at it being 28% of our pie, which is 100.8 degrees. So we go over, we have, actually, the first thing you need to do is from the center of your circle, you need to draw a line using the ruler side of your protractor, which will be your radius. And that will be your first slice of the pie. Okay, and then put the protractor back. You need to have your radius at 0. And now we can measure where 100.8 degrees is. So you want to look at the outside numbers. Since this is 0 degrees and this is 180 degrees, we're looking at the outside numbers. 100.8. Put a little mark there. And then what you can do is move, actually use different color. Okay, so you want to have your mark at 100.8, which is almost 101. And then what you want to do is use the flat end of your ruler to then draw a straight line to connect here. Don't use your free hand, you want to use a straight edge to connect the points. Okay? So this represents history, and just to remind yourself what it is, just lightly with your pencil put a little H in there so that you don't forget. And so now we're going to use this new radius that we made, and now we're going to measure the new angle from there, because all of this space represents all of the subjects that are not history. Okay, so we need to figure out, for science for instance, it's 31%. 31% of the people like science, so it needs to be 31% of our pie. It can't overlap with history, that space is already taken. So you need to move your protractor around, and we need to line up the 0 mark. Okay, center of our circle is lined up. Line up 0 with your radius because we're measuring from there. We need a new angle, and now we're going to 111.6. So almost 112. 10, 11, 12. Mine snaps to each degree, so it's hard for me to... 11, 12. Okay, and then you can move that out and connect your points. Connect your center to the proportion, and then mark with your pencil to show what subject it is. Do this for all 6 parts. Okay. All right, so here is the circle graph that I just made, and it's very rough. It's marked with just a letter to show what subject it is that I'm talking about so that I don't forget. And then you can erase those with your pencil as you go. You want to color code them. So if I color history, this pink color, put a little dot on the side, we'll make a key, and then you need a label that this is history. Okay, and then for all 6 subjects, you'll make a key. In the end, you need to double check your work to see, okay, is Spanish, French, and English, are those the smallest portions of my pie? Well, Spanish is 4, English is 5, and French is 6, and the other ones are around 30. So yes, that looks correct to me. All right. So what I'm looking for when you turn in your graph is something like this. So we need a title. You need all of your pieces of pie to be proportionate. The percentage needs to be indicated somewhere. In this case, it's written in each piece of the pie. They're colored different colors, and we have a key. Mr. Malarski likes Batman.